Alright, in this video we're going to be setting up sound effects and music for our scene. I'm going to be using the scene that I used in the last few videos because I want to have more objects to put sounds on, and this one has those little stalactites. So with this for our sound system, we're going to do a couple different things. We're going to have objects emit sounds themselves, and we'll also put in an audio manager to handle any sounds that we don't want to be variable, like based on distance. We just want to play through the speakers as a 2D sound. So we'll do both of those. And the first thing I'm going to do, if you remember, we have a camera and a camera holder. Just because I like to work with 2D games in a 2D flat plane, I'm going to move. The main camera has an audio listener as a default, and for sounds to work in Unity you need one audio listener and one or more audio sources, and those audio sources emit the sound in the scene, and based on the range of the sound and how close the audio listener is to that sound, they will output audio to the speakers, so at variable volumes. So I'm going to actually copy and remove the audio listener just to put it on that flat plane. I'm going to move it to our camera holder. That's just a preference of mine of working with the audio listener. So now it's on a 2D plane, and I don't have to really calculate any sort of 3D space for the audio listener. So the first thing I want to do, I want to add a sound to my warp hole here, just like sort of a sucking sort of sound, and I have a few ready. So I'm going to create a new folder for my audio. Just name it audio. And I have a folder of some sound effects and music that I want to use, which if you're in my class I'll give you I'll zip a file with these, and I'll let you use them as well. Alright, so it's importing a bunch of audio, and great, so we have all of these. And so I have this like vortex loop. I also have this one. So I'm going to choose probably the second one, I think. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just add a component and make this an audio source. And since this object itself is only going to use one audio clip, I don't have to do anything complicated in programming, and I also want to play all the time, so it's going to play on awake and it's going to loop. So I'm going to select loop here, and I'm going to drag and drop that that audio sound here. And based on the range, you can see max distance is 500, so that's really large. So when we hit play, we should be able to hear it. And we do. But I don't want that to be the case. I kind of want to start to hear it a little before we see it, just to know that it's sort of coming up. So I'm going to change the range, and we can visualize this if you make it really small. You can see the range a little bit better. So I'm going to actually make that maybe something like 40, and we should still hear it. Oh, I see. So here, actually, the reason why we were hearing it before was that the audio source defaults to 2D, Maybe that's because I built this project with 2D default. I'm not sure, but as long as this, if you make this a 3D sound in the spatial blend category, then you'll only be able to hear it when you're within range. So if I play through this now, we don't hear it. And should start to hear it soon. There we go. Great. So that's all we need to do for the warp hole. We just wanted to play one sound and we'll have it play over and over. Next thing, I want to keep doing another 3D sound, and I'm going to do that with the stalactite here, but I'm going to trigger it. So I'm going to put it on, apply any changes to my prefab, and oh, you know what? Did I? So on the stalactite object, I'm going to add an audio source. And this is also one that I think I'm just going to use one sound for. So I'm just going to, again, drop an audio clip onto this one, and I'm going to use wobble here, this sound. And so I'll drop that onto here. If I want it to be like a lower pitch wobble, I can pitch it down a little bit to maybe 0.5, something like that. And then we'll see how that sounds. If we play on Awake and we use Spatial Blend 2D, then we should hear it as we press play. Okay, so that one actually, if you pitch it down, it takes a little too long, so I'm going to leave it at 1. That's fine. So there's a little wobbly sound, but I want to trigger this, so I don't want to play on Awake. Actually, what I'm going to do is, as soon as we hit the trigger, if I go to my stalactite controller, when we hit the trigger, I'm also going to trigger the audio to play. What I'm going to do is, when we start the coroutine, I'm going to get the audio from the parent object, right? So the trigger doesn't have the audio, so we need to get it from the parent object. So we'll do transform parent, and we'll get a component, and we'll get the audio source. We got to make sure an audio source is attached to it, and then we just want to play. So we'll just play the clip. So that's nice. So now, make sure that this is a 3D sound. I want to make it a 3D sound, and I want the range to be something smaller, maybe 10, 20. Yeah, 20 kind of works. Okay, and then if I apply this to my prefab, or I can copy this component, let's see, apply. Since these were made using a prefab, then it sort of retains all the information for our parent object, so that's nice. So when I do this one will also do it. Sweet. Hello again. So I apologize. This video is coming 3 or so days after my other audio video. I did not save or export the second part to this video correctly, so I'm going back and doing it over. And I hope that I matched the place where I was in my last video, but I think I did. So in this one, so we have already done a lot of 2D or the 3D audio. If I hit play, then we have like the wobble sounds from my little stalactites, and we get a wind sound when we reach the end. We get the vortex sound coming from the warp hole. In this video, we're going to set up an audio manager for any sort of 2D sounds that we don't want to be affected by distance. We're also going to put some music into the game. So first off, make sure that I put an audio listener on my camera holder like we did last time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new component, an audio manager, a new script onto my game manager, and I'll tell you why in a second. So what we're going to do to trigger these sounds, these 2D sounds, is we're going to send messages to the audio manager. And one thing that's already being done that's really useful in our project so far is that we're sending a lot of messages to our game manager for our fail state, our win state, and reload level. Well, reload level is a different coroutine, but we're already sending fail and win states. So two of the things I want to do is to add a sound when you hit the sides that's like a buzzing sound. That means it's no good, and then you restart the level. The next thing I want to do is add a win sound, something that's happy, that tells the player that they did good to find the warp hole and that they're moving on to the next level. And then I also want to add a little bit even more character to our little cursor dude, and he's gonna sort of say, he's gonna emote some sounds that I have in our audio here. So first off, we can easily do fail and win states by creating our win. So we'll be creating the same function names as in our game manager. So when we send messages to our game manager, we're sending it to the game object itself. We're finding this game object and sending it to it, and the game manager and the audio manager are going to receive that, and they're going to go ahead and do their functions, their respective functions. So in our win sound, I have several different, well, let's start with our fail sound because that's easier to test. I have several different lose sounds that I want to use, 3 of them actually. So what I'm going to do is randomly play one of those, and I'm going to do that by making a public array of audio clips. Called fail sounds. And then when we do fail, when this is called, I'm going to find a random integer. So I'm going to make a new integer called rand, and I'm going to make that, I can make it random by using the random sort of from Unity library, and random range. And what this does is for float, it does min and max but inclusive, but for integer it's min and max and exclusive for the max. So For the minimum one, we always want to start with 0. And then we always, to find a random sound in our array of sounds, we get the length of our sounds. And then, so we can do that now. So fail sounds dot length. So that's our random. And since this is exclusive, because this is an integer, this works perfectly for us. We don't have to like -1 or +1, because so if I have 3 audio clips, this will return 3. I want a random integer that's either 0, 1, or 2 to refer to whatever space in our array, and it won't put out 3, so that's perfect. Next, we're going to play from our audio source. So we should make sure that our game manager has one of those. Audio source. And in our script, we'll do audio source dot, and we'll do play clip at point. So this feeds in an audio clip and a position. So this actually only works as a 3D sound, but what we're going to do is we're going to always feed in the exact sound that our camera holder is at, that our audio listener is at. So to do that, we'll get one of our fail sounds, and it'll be a random one, and we'll play that. But next we want to get the position of our listener. We can also set the volume too, which is helpful if we have like really loud sounds, which is the case for the fail sounds that I have. So to get the position of the listener, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the listener up here. I'm going to, game object, listener, and on start, we're going to set the listener equal to game objects dot find, and our listener is on our camera holder. So we're spawning the sound right where our listener is, and then we'll feed in the position of the listener. So listener dot transform dot position, and then we'll set the audio. So we can just do 1F to test it. That'll be, we feed in a float for the volume between 0 and 1, and 1 is full volume. So now we can just sort of test it and see if it I forgot, and so in my game manager, or in my audio manager, I need to put in all my fail sounds. So I set the array size to be 3, and then I load in all of my losing sounds. Now we can try. Yeah, so that like actually hurt my ears. So I'm gonna do maybe like 0.5. I kind of want it to be loud anyways. It's like a jolting buzz, but not that loud. Yeah, we'll try that for now. Next, we can do our win really easy. We're also sending win messages to our game manager, and I'm just gonna copy and paste this code. We still want a random integer because I have several win sounds. I just want to have a new array called win sounds, and I'll get the length of win sounds, and then I'll get a random audio clip from win sounds. not wind sounds, wind sounds. Okay. And I think these are a little quieter, so we can do it full volume. I've got requests for more slurping, so I'm going to incorporate more of that into my videos. All right, so we already have our code for that, so we can go into our audio manager. I have, I think, 3 that I like. This one, that one, that one's cool. I don't like that one. I think it's a little too slot machine-ish. The other ones are kind of okay. So I'm gonna do another three different audio sounds. And to test this, we'll just play through it. Cool. So now we have our win and fail sounds. The next thing I want to do is have him like emote some sounds whenever his eyes get all small and like scared. So I'm going to call that gasp in our audio manager. So gasp that. And then I am going to encode. I want to call this somewhere. So I think in our player controller we have this function called look here. Then here we can find our game manager. I think it's without a space. Yeah. And we'll send a message in our audio manager. We'll attach to the game manager. We'll receive that, and we're just gonna say gasp. And then I also have several different let me close this, several different emote sounds. So in our audio I have 3 of these, and so we'll make another array of 3 gasp sounds in our audio manager. So win sounds, fail sounds, gasp sounds. And this will be another 3. I'll put in all of my emote sounds into there. And now we want to do something in the function. I'm going to do a copy and paste again because we still want to use a random integer. And random range, random dot range. Oh, okay. This was just deprecated, so we're just gonna change it to range, and hopefully it works the same. Then we're gonna find our size of our gasp sounds instead, and get a random gasp sound, and we'll do it at full volume. So let's test it out. Cool. So he gasps whenever he's close. All right, what else? Oh, so the last thing to do to sort of complete our audio in this game space is we're gonna do music, and what I could do is I could add a clip to our audio source, and I can have it play on Awake. So I have this sort of music here. I can drag it over, say play on Awake, and make sure to loop it. But let me demonstrate what happens when I do this. So you notice that when I die, it restarts the music over and over. And that's actually, it can get grating. It's sort of breaks the flow a little bit. So what I want to do actually is to make sure that this keeps playing even when the level is reloaded. So the way I'm going to do that is actually I'm going to do what's called a singleton method. And I'm going to create a new object. I like to zero this out, so I'm just going to do that. And I'm going to call it Music Manager. I'm going to move it up close to my Game Manager. I'm going to create a new script called Music Manager. Create and add that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach an audio source to this object. Make it a 2D sound. Play and loop it like we did before. I want the volume to be like a little bit lower because I want to hear the sound effects a little bit better. Attach the loop like I did previously. Make sure this one doesn't have a loop. I can reset the settings here. Basically just reset all of this. And in our music manager, we're going to make sure that this game object doesn't get destroyed when we reload the level. So doing a singleton, even sometimes I get confused. It's a little bit more of an advanced technique, so documentation is our friend. It's good to refer to documentation whenever you don't completely understand something. So there's this page on writing a game manager, and they do this sort of singleton style in here. And so let me give this a shot. So we want to declare an instance of our music manager. So we do private static, and we call the class. So music manager. So we have an instance of type music manager, and we'll default that instance doesn't equal anything. Then we're going to we're going to return an instance here. I want to check for another instance of this music manager, and if one exists, then I want to destroy whatever this script is attached to. Otherwise, I want to set that instance to the game object that's not going to be destroyed. So to do that, I'm going to use awake instead of start. And awake is called before a start function. And the difference between start and awake is this. So start is going to it's going to go through this function as soon as a script is enabled. That could be at the beginning of the level. But if I call awake, then awake is going to be called before start. So even if the script is not enabled, this is best for initializing instances and different components at the start of everything. So awake for when a script is not enabled, start for when you want it as soon as it's enabled. Okay, so as I said before, we're going to check if our instance is not null and that instance is not what this script is attached to. Instance doesn't equal this. And we're going to destroy the game object that this is attached to because an instance already exists and it's not this one. Then we'll return after we destroy our game object. Otherwise, so that means one or both of these conditions is not true. We're going to set the instance to be the one that this is attached to. So we're only doing this when the instance is null, or if it's the instance is this one. So that in that case, this wouldn't really do anything because but that's fine. So that's our checking for instances, and then we're going to make sure that this object doesn't get destroyed. And there's a handy don't destroy on load for that from Unity library. So we're going to do this dot game object, and we make sure that the game object attached to this script is never destroyed. So that one, singleton is a little bit more complicated, but thankfully for our music, we can simply attach our music, make sure that the game object doesn't get destroyed, and then hit play. So you can see now that our music doesn't start over. And then when I test this out, you can see here on don't destroy on load, there's the music manager, which isn't getting destroyed. The volume was a little too high for me still, so I'm just going to test it out with something a little lighter. Yeah, I like that a little bit better, so maybe 25% volume. Okay, that's all the audio, and this time I hope that I export it correctly.